Hello and welcome, I'm Joshua Barnes and you're watching The World Report. Let's first take a look at the headlines. A ceasefire in Gaza has officially begun after Hamas released a list with the names of hostages to be exchanged for Palestinian prisoners being held by Israel. 3 Israeli hostages will be released today, with Romy Gonen, Doron Steinbecker and British-Israeli dual national Emily Damari returning. Ahead of Donald J. Trump's inauguration as the 47th US president on Sunday, thousands have protested in Washington. Activists for women's rights, racial justice and other causes rallied ahead of the Republicans' second term. Supporters of impeached South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol have stormed a Seoul court as the leader's detention has been extended. Protesters smashed windows and doors before rushing the building as Yoon faces criminal proceedings over his failed martial law bid. Russian strikes on Ukraine have killed 6 people, including 3 in the capital city of Kyiv. Missiles and drones were used in the attack, which hit buildings including a shopping mall, business centre and a metro station, among others. A ceasefire between Israel and Hamas is now in effect after a nearly 3-hour delay. The pause in fighting follows the last-minute release of names of the hostages to be exchanged. The deal will see the release of 3 hostages later today, with more to follow in the coming weeks. Families are anxiously awaiting their loved ones' return after more than 15 months in captivity. The ceasefire, which includes humanitarian aid, is expected to last for 6 weeks. Let's take a look at this report.
A long-awaited ceasefire between Israel and Hamas has officially begun. This takes place after a last-minute delay of almost 3 hours. The fighting continued past the initially provisioned 8:30 a.m. local deadline, as the Israeli military said Hamas had failed to provide the names of the first 3 hostages due to be released, per the terms of the agreement.
They began violating the agreement before it even went into effect. This was also the case in the previous ceasefire agreement, which Hamas also repeatedly violated. They continue to torture the hostages and their families. We received the list over 18 hours after it was due, according to the agreement.
The office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu later confirmed that a list of names had been provided and that the ceasefire would take effect from 11:15 a.m. local time. Now, families on both sides wait for the release of their loved ones who have been held by Hamas for more than 15 months. The exchange is set to begin at 4 p.m. local time on Sunday. The 24-year-old Romy Gonen, 31-year-old Doron Steinbecker and 28-year-old Emily Damari were expected to be released later on Sunday. The forum said in a statement, "We await their safe return to Israel to be reunited with their families after 471 days in Hamas captivity." The first phase of the ceasefire calls for Hamas to release 33 hostages over a 6-week period. They include women, children and hostages over 50 years old. The plan says 3 living female hostages will be returned on day 1, 4 hostages will be released on day 7, and the remaining 26 over the next 5 weeks. Bureau Report NewsX.
Let's now head to North America for more of the latest news updates there. The Los Angeles water chief has been given a police security detail amid threats against her and water employees. The threats followed wildfires which swept through Southern California this week. According to reports, Los Angeles Department of Water and Power's CEO, Janice Canones, now has a 24/7 LAPD detail in response to the threats. Trump illegal migrant arrests to start on day 1. Raids to detain and deport migrants living in the US without permission are set to begin on the first full day of President-elect Donald Trump's new administration. However, it's still unclear where the operations, as threatened by Trump's border czar Tom Homan, could begin. Earlier reports indicated deportations would start in Chicago, which has a large migrant population, as early as Tuesday. Joe Biden will travel to South Carolina today, which is his last full day as the US president. There he will mark a national holiday honouring civil rights icon Martin Luther King Jr. Biden will also visit Royal Missionary Baptist Church in Charleston. According to the reports, there he is supposed to attend services and speak about the continued fight to make Dr. King's dream a reality. Apart from this, Biden is to attend an event at the city's International African American Museum as well. A hidden cross-border tunnel used to smuggle migrants and contraband between the US and Mexico is set to be sealed. The 300-metre tunnel is to be sealed, runs between Ciudad Juarez in Mexico and El Paso in Texas. The tunnel was concealed in a storm sewer system and only discovered last week. According to local media, probe of its construction is underway. Security has been ramped up on both sides of the border ahead of the inauguration of Donald Trump, who has vowed to launch mass deportations, as we mentioned previously. A two-alarm fire in Toronto's Pape Village neighbourhood on Sunday morning sent one person to hospital. As per police sources, firefighters were called to the building near Pape and Mortimer Avenues shortly after 6 a.m. to find the structure fully engulfed. One person was recovered from the building and treated for smoke inhalation. Toronto paramedic services transported an adult male to hospital in a stable condition. Incoming President Donald Trump has launched his own cryptocurrency. It quickly soared in market capitalization to several $billions. His meme coin, Trump, lacks intrinsic value and is an extremely volatile investment, say some. The venture was coordinated by CIC Digital LLC, an affiliate of the Trump Organization. Donald Trump wrote on his social media platform, "My new official Trump meme is here." The incoming US President Donald Trump's arrival in Washington for a celebratory rally was tarnished by protests. A coalition of groups organised the movement with the aim of confronting what they called Trumpism. What all happened at the site of the protests and what are the updates on Trump's rally? Let's take a look.
President-elect Donald Trump arrived in the Washington area on Saturday evening for a celebration of his return to power ahead of an inauguration ceremony that has been upended by record cold temperatures. Trump flew aboard an Air Force plane sent by outgoing President Joe Biden to the Republicans' base in Palm Beach, Florida. His wife Melania and son Barron accompanied him on Saturday's flight. Elvis Presley impersonator Leo Days serenaded the incoming president and First Lady ahead of a reception for about 500 guests and fireworks display. The 78-year-old Trump is due to hold a rally with supporters inside the Capital One Arena in downtown Washington on Sunday, the eve of his inauguration, as well as a post-inauguration event Monday afternoon. Thousands of mostly female demonstrators took to the streets of Washington, D.C. on Saturday to rally against President-elect Donald Trump 2 days ahead of his inauguration. The People's March, previously known as the Women's March, has taken place every year since 2017. A coalition of groups organized the movement with the stated aim of confronting Trumpism, according to its website. Smaller protests against Trump were held in New York City and on the other side of the country in Seattle. The rallies coincide with Trump's arrival to the nation's capital for a series of weekend events in the lead-up to his swearing-in ceremony on Monday. Saturday's People's March in Washington, D.C. drew smaller numbers than its predecessors. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now time for some more news updates from across the continent of Europe. A ski lift collapsed at a resort in the Spanish region of Aragon, injuring dozens of people. The regional government said that 9 of them were very seriously injured. Several helicopters were working in the area to rescue the skiers and transfer the injured to nearby hospitals. The cause of the cable failures remains unknown, while the ski resort's management are yet to comment. Croatia's Deputy Prime Minister Josip Dabro has resigned. This came after footage surfaced of him shooting at random from a moving car. In the video, Josip Dabro can be seen in the passenger seat chatting, laughing and singing along to loud music. He later picked up a pistol and began shooting through an open window into darkness. Dabro, who represents hard-right nationalist party Homeland Movement, said the video was several years old and that he fired training bullets. The government called Dabro's behaviour inappropriate and irresponsible. Germany's ambassador to the United States has warned about the incoming Trump administration. He said the new government will rob US law enforcement and hand big tech companies co-governing power. This information is according to a briefing document dated January the 14th and signed by Ambassador Andreas Michaelis. It describes Donald Trump's agenda for his second White House term as one of maximum disruption. Trump's transition team had no immediate comment on the ambassador's assessment. 3 lawyers for Alexei Navalny have been found guilty by a Russian court of belonging to an extremist group. Navalny was a Kremlin critic who died last year in prison while serving a 19-year sentence on extremism charges he denied. Igor Segunin, Alexei Lipster and Vadim Kobzev were tried behind closed doors in Patushki, east of Moscow. They have been sentenced retrospectively to 3.5, 5 and 5.5 years. Prosecutors accused the lawyers of using their status to pass letters written by Navalny during his time in prison to his associates. Tens of thousands of anti-government protesters in Belgrade protested outside of Serbia's state television headquarters. The protest was organised by students of the Belgrade State University who are demanding that those responsible are brought to justice. They stood in silence in front of RTS building to call for objective reporting. The students condemned what they called pro-government bias and smear campaigns against them. They commemorated victims of a railway station roof collapse for which they blamed Serbian authorities. A British man named Michael Whitbread living in Italy has admitted to stabbing his partner to death. He claimed that he did it after she accused him of cheating on her. He told a court he could not remember how many times he stabbed fellow Brit Michelle Fyers. In 2023, the couple had been living in a renovated cottage in Verratti at the time of the killing. Whitbread fled the scene and drove back to the UK. However, his daughter alerted police to his whereabouts when Fyers' body was discovered. He was extradited to Italy for the trial. Chaotic scenes have unfolded in South Korea as President Yoon Suk-yeol's detention is extended by a court, fueling political unrest. With authorities citing fears of evidence tampering, the decision sparked intense clashes outside the courthouse between riot police and Yoon supporters. Despite the turmoil, here is the full report.
A court has extended the detention of South Korea's impeached president, Yoon Suk-yeol, after concerns that he could destroy evidence if released. The 64-year-old president, arrested following a weeks-long standoff with investigators, will remain in custody for up to 20 days. Yoon has refused to cooperate with the investigation, with his lawyer confirming he will not be questioned by the Corruption Investigation Office for high-ranking officials. Outside the court, tensions escalated as pro-Yoon supporters clashed with police, smashing windows and doors. Multiple arrests have been made following the violent incident. Acting President Choi Sang-mok has expressed strong regret over the violence, calling it unacceptable in a democratic society. Authorities have pledged to increase security at future events. Many South Koreans expressing their dissatisfaction with his actions and the ongoing political turmoil.
어제 저는 법에서는 적어도 윤 대통령을 막을 수 있으리라는 생각에 밤에 잠도 안 자고 기다렸는데 결국은 법까지 무너지는 그런 상황을 보면서 마음의 개탄을 할 수밖에 없는 그런 상황이고.
However, the protests against Yoon, sparked by his controversial attempt to impose martial law last month, have only intensified. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now for the latest updates from across the world of business. US Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen warned that the government will hit its borrowing limit on Tuesday, triggering the use of extraordinary measures to avoid default. In a letter to congressional leaders, Yellen stated that these measures would begin on January the 21st, just days after the Biden administration hangs over to President-elect Donald Trump. US stocks surged on Friday, capping a strong week driven by optimism about the economy and interest rate trends. The S&P 500 and Dow posted their largest weekly gains since early November, while the Nasdaq saw its best performance since December. Positive data eased inflation concerns and fueled expectations of earlier, larger rate cuts by the Federal Reserve. Spanish telecom giant Telefónica announced on Saturday that its board has appointed Indra chairman Marc Mutra as its new CEO, replacing Jose Maria Alvarez Palet. The decision follows a request from state-owned fund SEPI. Telefónica's board held an extraordinary meeting to terminate Alvarez Palet's contract and offer the role to Mutra, who accepted. The US Equal Employment Opportunity Commission has sued General Motors and the United Auto Workers on Friday. They are accused of age discrimination and sexual harassment at Stellantis, including Chrysler. GM and UAW allegedly reduced benefits for older employees on Social Security since October 2019 under their collective agreement. Asset manager BlackRock has agreed to new disclosure requirements regarding its use of sustainable investment factors. This follows a legal settlement with Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti. This resolution marks another move by BlackRock and other firms away from environmental, social and governance measures, amid growing anti-measures opposition from Republican politicians, including President-elect Donald Trump. Starbucks CEO Brian Niccol announced on Friday that the company will cut jobs as part of its turnaround plan. The details of the layoffs, expected by early March, will not affect in-store teams or investments in store hours. Niccol, who took over 4 months ago, is addressing challenges from competition and declining demand in the US and China. Russian attacks on Ukrainian territory continue. The country launched retaliatory strikes in Ukrainian capital Kyiv, as well as Zaporizhia, claiming several lives. Here's a detailed report on the same.
A Russian missile strike on the Ukrainian capital, Kyiv, killed 3 people. Ukraine branded it a heinous attack, while Moscow described it as retaliation. Ukrainian officials said another 3 people were killed in Russian strikes in Zaporizhia, and Moscow claimed fresh advances on the ground. Russia's defense ministry said its forces had carried out a group strike with precision-guided weapons against Ukrainian military-industrial facilities. Visuals show a multi-story building with windows blown out, debris strewn across the street, and the charred facade of a damaged McDonald's outlet. The attack on the target in Kyiv was retaliation for Ukraine's use of US-supplied ATACMS missiles in strikes on Russian territory, it added. On the other hand, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky mentioned about the fatalities and rescue operations.
Усім, хто постраждав від цих ударів, надається необхідна допомога. Я вдячний всім лікарям, працівникам ДСНС, комунальним службам, поліцейським нашим, які задіяні в рятувальній роботі. На жаль, були забрані життя цими ракетами. І в Києві, і в Запоріжжі є загиблі.
Additionally, Zelensky reported that this week alone, Ukraine's defense forces shot down 33 missiles, including ballistic ones, and 311 attack drones. The war continues to ravage with each passing day. It is to be seen how the events unfold further with the inauguration of the new US administration. Bureau Report, NewsX.
Now let's take a look at some news updates from across South America. The death toll from attacks by rebels in Colombia has risen to 60 in the country's restive Catatumbo region near the border with Venezuela. Rival groups have for years been fighting in the region over control of the cocaine trade. Fighting in recent days pitted rebels from the left-wing National Liberation Army, which is the biggest of the armed groups still active in Colombia, against dissidents of the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia. The governor of Argentina's Chubut province, Ignacio Torres, said that the fires that broke out in the province in recent days are not a coincidence. He suspiciously pointed against those who were evicted days ago of illegally occupying land in the Los Aleches National Park. Torres said that the miscreants also tried to set fire to the Estancia Amance in Cordillera. and setting fire to all the machinery and vehicles in the place. Brazil's former president Bolsonaro said that he is the victim of political persecution. The statements came as he accompanied his wife to the airport in Brasilia to board a flight to attend US President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration. Brazil's Supreme Court on Thursday denied Bolsonaro's request to temporarily restore his passport so that he could travel to the inauguration. Bolsonaro currently holds no position that would allow him to represent Brazil at the event. A Bolivian judge has ordered the arrest of the former president Evo Morales. The order came over his alleged abuse of a teenage girl while in office. This raises the stakes in the state's month-long showdown with the former leader. The judge in the southern city of Tarija called for 65-year-old Morales to be arrested. Earlier, Bolivia's first indigenous president ducked out of a hearing in his possible pre-trial detention for a second time. TikTok is banned in the United States, impacting 170 million users. Trump hints at a 90-day extension. ByteDance resists selling US operations, while competitors like Instagram Reels could benefit. Here is the full report.
Millions of TikTok users in the United States have lost access to the app as a federal ban has taken effect, impacting 170 million Americans. The ban, enacted just a day before President-elect Donald Trump's inauguration, follows months of legal battles over national security concerns tied to the app's Chinese ownership. Trump has hinted at a possible 90-day extension, with an announcement expected after his swearing-in tomorrow. TikTok CEO Shu Chu is reportedly attending the event, signaling hopes for a resolution. The US Supreme Court has upheld the ban unless ByteDance, TikTok's parent company, divests its US operations. While officials cite risks of data access and algorithm manipulation by Chinese authorities, no public evidence has been provided. Meanwhile, Apple, Google, and Oracle are required to enforce the ban, with competitors like Instagram Reels and YouTube Shorts poised to benefit. Bureau Report, NewsX.
That is unfortunately all we have time for, but we'll be back with more of your latest international news updates.